A wedding dripping in gold. My seat was a single, empty chair by the kitchen doors, thick with the smell of steamed fish. No plate, no silverware. The bride called it self-managed. I stood and said, "Fine, I'm leaving." That's when the screaming started at the head table, and every single phone turned on to record. My name is Corinne Blake. I was standing in the doorway of the Grand Magnolia Ballroom at the Ravenel Grand, which is Charleston's way of proving it still has enough old money luster to plate the walls in gold leaf. The air was suffocatingly thick, a heavy blanket woven from the scent of 1,000 white lilies and the humid weight of entitlement. And underneath it, I caught the other scent. It is the one I can never explain. A sharp, acidic tang, like old pennies left to soak in a wet sink. The smell of rust and bad wiring and decisions made in quiet, desperate rooms. It is the smell I get when something is deeply, structurally wrong. It was faint at the grand entrance, but as I stepped onto the plush, custom-woven carpet, it was getting stronger. I looked for them, across the sea of Vera Wang and bespoke tuxedos. I saw the head table, elevated on a dais like a royal court. My father, Philip Blake, was laughing. It was his performance laugh, the one he used for banking partners and potential investors. A booming, hollow sound designed to fill a room and signal robust confidence. Beside him, my mother, Marianne, was a statue of perfect matriarchal grace. Her pearls were immaculate, her spine was rigid steel, and her smile was a triumph of expensive dentistry. Aimed at the adjacent table of her Heritage Circle friends, they were the picture of success, obsessed with the correct form. They had not spoken to me since I arrived, which was, in itself, the standard greeting. The string quartet was sawing through Vivaldi, a frantic, glittering sound that matched the anxiety thrumming in the air. I clutched my program. The seating chart was embossed in gold script. Another tiny performance of wealth. My name was there. A lonely satellite. Corinne Blake, table 27. I walked. My heels, the sensible ones I always wore, sank into the pile of the carpet. I passed table 10, a riot of college friends shouting over the music. I passed table 15, the somber, watchful contingent of the groom's family. The numbers climbed. I felt the vibration of the bass from the kitchen before I saw the door. The air grew warmer, the scent of lilies replaced by the rising, humid aroma of steamed fish and industrial dish soap. And there it was, 27. It was not really in the ballroom. It was in the ballroom's orbit, a forgotten moon shoved against a temporary service partition. On its left, the thundering, swinging door to the main kitchen. On its right, the fire exit. Every 90 seconds, that kitchen door burst open. It was a rhythmic blast of noise and heat. Shouts from the line cooks, the crash of metal pans, the humid, overwhelming smell of the salmon entree. But the location, the proximity to the noise and the fish, was not the insult. The insult was the table itself. It was naked. The other tables were draped in heavy ivory silk. This one was bare, cheap laminate wood. The others had towering floral arrangements. This one had nothing. And this was the apex of the joke, the punchline written just for me. There was no plate, no folded linen napkin, no water glass, no champagne flute, no heavy silver-plated knife, fork, or spoon. It was a void, a circle of emptiness, set for one. A young waiter, his face slick with sweat and the stress of a $500-a-plate event, hurried past carrying a heavy tray of champagne flutes. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was quiet, but it is trained to cut through noise. He stopped, startled. "Ma'am?" "There seems to be a mistake with this setting. Table 27. He glanced at my table, then at the master list clutched in his hand. He frowned, running a damp finger down the page, his lips moving. "Table 25, 26, 27, Blake, C." He tapped the paper, his frown deepening. "Ah, I see." "You see what?" He looked up, and I saw the most dangerous expression a person can receive. Pity. He was genuinely embarrassed for me. He lowered his voice, leaning in as if sharing a state secret. "It's correct, ma'am. The instructions are specific. This table is marked self-managed." The term hung in the air, sterile and corporate. "Self-managed?" I repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, swallowing hard, "it's marked here. 0 meals. No service. No place setting. I'm sorry. 0 meals." He looked like he wanted to offer me a bread roll from his pocket. "The bride's specific instructions," he added, a desperate little addendum to absolve himself. "I understand," I said, and I did. The smell of wet pennies spiked, sharp as ammonia. The rot was right here, in this meticulously planned, gold-leafed room. Of course, she had been watching. A predator senses when the trap has sprung. Madison swept over, a magnificent cloud of white tulle and engineered joy. My sister, the bride, her dress was a $20,000 confection of lace and aggression. Her hair was pinned with diamonds that were, for the first time in her life, probably real. "Corinne," she said, her voice a high-pitched trill for the benefit of the nearby tables, a performance of sisterly delight. "You made it. I was worried." "Madison," I kept my voice perfectly flat, "there is no seat setting at my table." She leaned in, a conspiratorial gesture. Her smile tightened, the diamonds on her necklace winking in the candlelight. The performance dropped for one breathtaking second. Her eyes were cold, and the metallic scent was rolling off her. "Oh, that?" she whispered, the trill gone, replaced by the flat, bored tone she used only for me. "Don't be dramatic. We had to make cuts. You know how it is." She flicked her eyes over my simple, dark blue dress, the one I had bought off the rack. "Honestly, it's just a waste. You barely eat anyway, and the catering is per head. Just don't waste the food on you." She straightened up, the smile snapping back into place as if on a spring. "Leave the gift by the main table, and you can go. We'll just tell everyone you felt sick. It's fine." I stared at her. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sadness. I felt the cold, clear click of a machine processing data. I catalogued the moment, the exact shade of cream in her dress, the slight tremor in her hand, not from nerves, but from the champagne she had been drinking since noon. The way her eyes darted away from mine, checking to see if anyone important was witnessing this small, private execution. This was the culmination. This was the masterpiece of a lifetime of petty, calculated cruelties, all designed to reinforce the one central family truth. I was the outlier, the problem, the one who saw things she was not supposed to see. Self-managed, it was perfect. It was the story of my life in this family, distilled into a 2-word memo. I was not a guest. I was an errand, a problem to be disposed of. I was not to be fed. I was to be managed. I became aware of a phone. One of her bridesmaids, the one named Jessica, was filming the head table, laughing. She panned across the room, capturing the laughing guests, the ridiculous ice sculpture, the champagne tower, and as she turned, her lens swept right past Madison and me. It captured the tableau, the magnificent bride, me in my simple dress, and the barren, humiliating wood of table 27. A small, insignificant detail, a seed. Madison did not notice. She tapped my arm, a gesture of faux affection that felt like a sting. "Don't look so glum. It's my big day." She glided away, a vision in white, back to her throne, back to the applause. I stood by the empty chair, a ghost at a feast I was not invited to. I looked across the opulent, glittering room. I looked past the dancers, past the champagne, to the head table. My father, Philip, was swirling his wine, his gaze fixed on the ruby liquid as if it held the secrets of the universe. He was avoiding. He knew. My mother, Marianne, was turned slightly, listening to the man beside her, but her shoulders were rigid. She knew. Of course she knew. She had approved the seating chart. She had approved the 0 meals memo. This was her signature. just as much as Madison's. Her obsession with correct form meant she had personally signed off on this humiliation. I watched her lean toward my father. I could not hear the words, not from this distance, not over the sound of the quartet, but I did not need to. I could read the familiar shape of the conversation, her sharp, whispered complaint, his dismissive reassurance, then a slight lull in the music as the song changed. My father's voice, low but carrying, a resonant baritone trained to command boardrooms. It reached me across the divide, clear as a bell. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe she should just go. My mother nodded, a tiny, sharp, bird-like movement of her head. She picked up her water glass, her eyes scanning the room, checking her audience. Agreement, compliance, the final seal on the verdict. That was it, the final piece of data. I picked up my small clutch purse from the empty chair. I did not look at the pitying waiter. I did not look at the laughing guests. I walked away from the kitchen door, away from the smell of fish. My heels clicked on the parquet floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the space I was carving through the room. I passed the head table. I did not stop. I did not look at them, but I spoke, my voice pitched just for them, quiet and clear. You will regret this. My mother flinched, her pearls rattling. My father's grip tightened on his wineglass. I kept walking. I walked past the ice sculpture, past the ridiculous champagne tower. I pushed through the heavy gold-plated doors into the cool, silent marble of the main hall. The air was clean. The metallic smell was gone. I took a deep breath, the first one of the night. I was halfway to the main entrance, halfway to freedom, and a man's voice, not my father's, bellowed from the ballroom behind me, cutting straight through the Vivaldi quartet, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. She's right. The music stopped, and the screaming began. I have always been able to hear the cracks. I do not mean the obvious, shattering sound of a plate hitting the floor. I mean the tiny hairline fractures that form in the glaze long before the structure fails. The sound of stress. In our house, everything was high gloss. The polished Charleston oak floors, the blinding white paint on the perfectly preserved antebellum moldings, the relentlessly bright smiles for Sunday service. But I could always hear the stress points, the places where the pressure of performance was becoming too much. It was not just a sound, it was a frequency. It felt like a low vibration in my teeth, a frequency no one else in my family, a unit built on willful ignorance, could tune into. Sometimes, it was a smell. I remember the day the smell started. I was 9 years old. It was a humid, low-country Sunday in July, the kind of day where the air is so thick and wet you can drink it. My father was hosting a barbecue, which meant my father was looking for money. Philip Blake was a man defined by his boundless, consuming ambition, a man who believed devoutly in the holy trinity of college football, fresh business cards, and the guaranteed upward trend of any market he happened to be in. My mother, Mary Ann, was gliding across the perfectly manicured lawn, a vision in crisp, white linen, ensuring everyone's glass of sweet tea was full. She lived and died by the right image, her social calendar, her meticulous seating charts, and her memberships in the right charity clubs were not hobbies. They were her armor and her occupation. A man named Mr. Keaton arrived. He was new, not from Charleston. He wore an expensive-looking suit that was already wilting in the heat, and he laughed with the same booming, hollow confidence as my father. They were a duet of aggressive optimism. My father steered him over to me, where I was sitting on the steps, away from the noise. "This is my quiet one, Corinne," my father announced, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Say hello to Mr. Keaton. Mr. Keaton is going to help your old dad build the future." I stood, the way I was taught, and put my small hand out. The moment my skin touched his, it happened. It was not a vibration this time. It was the smell. It was overwhelming and sharp. The metallic tang of old, wet pennies. The smell of rust and battery acid. It was the smell of deceit. It was so strong it made my eyes water and my stomach clench. I pulled my hand back as if I had been burned. "What is it?" my father boomed, his smile not wavering. He smells wrong, I said. The air stopped moving. The chirping of the cicadas seemed to suddenly cut out. Mr. Keaton's smile twitched. What did you say? My father's voice was lighter now, tighter. He smells, I tried again. Like the old battery in the garage, the one that leaked. He smells like a hole. My mother materialized at my side, her fingers digging into my shoulder like steel claws. Corinne, you will apologize to Mr. Keaton right now. But he's going to make something break, I whispered, the panic rising. The smell was all over him. Mr. Keaton laughed, a dry, papery rattle. Strange kid, very imaginative. She's just creative, my father stammered, his face a blotchy crimson that clashed with his golf shirt. She reads too many books. I was sent to my room, later, long after the guests had left. I heard them in the study. I crept down the hall, the polished wood cool beneath my feet. He's putting in $50,000. Marianne, my father hissed. 50,000. This is the one. And she insults him. She's morbid, my mother replied, her voice thin. She needs to be corrected. I pushed the door open. They both froze, looking at me like an infestation. Mom, please, I begged. Don't let him. That man is not real. He's just a smell. He's a crack. My mother slapped the antique desk so hard, the silver picture frames rattled. Stop it. You stop it right now. You are making things up, and you are embarrassing this family. You will not speak of this again. I was grounded for being morbid. For 1 month, the house was electric with my father's new venture. He was energized, expansive, buying new ties, talking about expanding the porch. Then, the silence started. The phone calls that were taken in the study with the door locked. The hushed, frantic arguments that replaced the booming laughter. The sounds of cracking, this time from my mother. One morning, the dark green sedan my father polished every single Saturday, the one that was his image, was gone. It was replaced by a smaller, beige, domestic model. Better mileage, he announced to the empty breakfast room. Smart efficiency, that's the future. The summer vacation was canceled. The savings account, the one my mother used for her charity galas and her right image, was vaporized. The $50,000 was gone. Mr. Keaton was gone. His phone was disconnected. The future my father was building had been a mirage. No one ever said, Corinne, you were right. That would have been an admission that their world was flawed. It would have meant the right image was a lie and the market did not. In fact, always go up. It would have meant that their intuition was wrong, and mine was right. That was inadmissible. Instead, I became the problem. The night my father sold the car, my mother came into my room. She did not turn on the light. She stood in the doorway, a tall, rigid shadow against the hall light. I don't know what you did, she said, her voice thin and cold as a razor. I don't know what dark thoughts you put out into the world, but you bring bad luck into this house. You and your strange, morbid imagination. You cursed us. Cursed, that was the word. Madison, my younger sister, who was always bright, always loud, always the center of every spotlight, found the word delicious. She snatched it from my mother and took it to school. She weaponized it. I became the curse. Don't get too close to Corinne, she would warn her giggling friends in the hall. You might lose your allowance. Hey, Corinne, she'd call across the cafeteria. Did you predict the mystery meat would be terrible today? Did your bad smell tell you? She made my intuition a party trick for her friends, a performance of my freakishness, a way to mock me, to isolate me. She made me toxic. So I learned to build walls. I learned to shut up. I stopped talking about the vibrations. I stopped warning them about the smells. I stopped trying to point out the cracks in the foundation. I retreated. I went into my room, into books, into drawing. I drew pictures of structures, of solid, balanced things that could not be knocked over. I read books about logic and code. I would sit in a crowded room, the noise of my family's forced, brittle gaiety washing over me, and I would practice. I would feel the spike of acid and the smell of rust from my aunt when my uncle praised her sister. I would hear the hairline fracture in my father's voice when he talked about a market dip he claimed not to care about. I would see the desperation in my mother's eyes as she smiled at her charity rivals. I catalogued it all, I filed it away, and I said nothing. My intuition was a compass. I knew that, but in a family that insists the sun rises in the west, a compass is not a tool, it is a sin. The scar tissue formed deep and thick around that knowledge. Being right did not save me. Being right did not make them love me or protect me. It did the opposite. It made them need a scapegoat, and I was the perfect, silent, observant one. I was the strange, quiet girl who saw the rot under the gold paint, and in their world, seeing the rot was the same as creating it. I sat in my room, listening to the muffled sounds of another one of their loud, bright parties downstairs. A party I was not invited to. I would not be a curse. I would not be a compass without a map. If they would not listen to the warning, they would have to look at the proof. I would learn to find the map. I would learn to turn this feeling, this curse, into a profession. I would find the data. I would find the paper trail, the bank statements, the hidden emails. I would let the cold, hard, undeniable evidence speak for me, because my own voice would never be enough. And one day, I would build a life so solid, so grounded in verifiable proof, that their entire world of glittering, hollow images would have no choice but to break against it. The walls I built in high school were thick, but they were not soundproof. I remained the family curse, the quiet, morbid girl who lived in her room. But in Mr. Davies's 11th grade advanced literature class, the walls did not matter. Mr. Davies was a small, precise man with a mind like a steel trap. He did not teach books. He taught subtext. He taught us that what an author does not say is the only thing that matters. One day, we were discussing a novel, a complex family drama. A classmate was arguing that the main character was happy because she smiled all the time. Mr. Davies sighed. "Miss Blake," he said, his eyes finding me in the back row. "You have been silent. What does the text tell you?" I looked at the page. "She's not happy," I said. "She's terrified. He never says she speaks. She smiles. She nods. She arranges flowers. But she has no lines. She's a hostage. The smile is a mask. The author is screaming that she's trapped." The class was silent. My classmate looked confused. Mr. Davies stared at me, a long, assessing look. "That," he said, his voice quiet, "is exactly correct. You are not just reading the words. Miss Blake, you are reading the negative space. You are reading the structure." After class, he held me back. "That curse your sister enjoys talking about," he said, referencing the school gossip I did not know he was aware of. "That's not a curse. It's a structured analytical tool. You just do not have the vocabulary for it yet." He wrote a name and a phone number on a piece of paper. "This is my sister-in-law, Eleanor Pike. She lives in Raleigh. She also reads the negative space. She just gets paid a lot of money to do it." I met Eleanor Pike 2 months later. On a summer internship I had to lie to my parents about. I told them it was a data entry summer job. Eleanor was in her 50s, with short, iron-gray hair and an expression of permanent, mild impatience. She did not work in a glittering office. She ran a high-level corporate restructuring firm from a quiet, secure brick building that looked more like a fortress than an office. There were no pleasantries. She did not ask about my family or my hobbies. She sat me at a polished steel table. "Mr. Davies says you see patterns," she said. It was not a question. I feel them," I said, my voice small. "Sometimes I smell them, like wet metal." Eleanor nodded, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "The telltale. I get a headache, a migraine, right behind the left eye. It's just a signal. The signal is not the point. The signal just tells you where to dig. She pointed to a whiteboard behind her. Your family, your school, they punish you for the signal. They call it a curse because you declare the house is on fire when you only smell smoke. You have no proof. You are a compass without a map. She picked up a red marker and wrote on the board. The compass points the way, she said. The map is the proof. The feeling is the compass. The evidence is the map. You are useless without the map. You are just a crazy person with a magnet. That was my first lesson. We are not in the business of feelings, Corinne, she said, her voice sharp. We are in the business of verifiable fact. You will learn to build a wall, not to hide, but to filter. You will take that scent of yours, and you will treat it like an anonymous tip. It is not truth. It is a lead. She drew 3 boxes on the board. This is the method. 1. Scent. You get the telltale, the metallic smell, the headache. You write it down. Smelled rot in the finance department. 2. Hypothesis. You translate the feeling into a testable question. Hypothesis. The VP of Finance is cooking the books to hide a loss. 3. Audit. You find the map. You pull the reports. You check the vendor logs. You cross-reference the expense accounts. You find the proof. She underlined the word audit 3 times. You never, ever present the scent. You never mention the hypothesis. You only, and exclusively, present the audit. You don't declare. You prove. I went to college. I got an economics degree from a decent state university. My parents were relieved I was doing something normal, even if it was, in their eyes, a lackluster C+ average. The degree was just paper. It was my cover. My real education happened every summer and every break with Eleanor. She taught me how to read a balance sheet like a confession. She taught me how to conduct anonymous internal surveys that could pinpoint a toxic manager in a department of 500. She taught me to build the emotional wall, to listen to the scent, but never, ever to trust it. I learned to be a ghost in a boardroom, a quiet data analyst in the corner, listening to the vibrations, then disappearing to build the map. My first major solo project was for a nonprofit medical clinic in Raleigh. They were hemorrhaging money, and the board was about to fire the entire administrative staff. Eleanor sent me in. I sat in the back of a board meeting for 6 hours. The CEO was a charismatic, beloved figure. He spoke beautifully about community and service, but the entire time he spoke, I smelled it, wet, rusty pennies, and the staff, when he addressed them, looked terrified. Scent. The CEO is beloved, but the air is toxic. Hypothesis. The CEO is the source of the rot, not the staff. He is a charismatic bully. Audit. I spent 1 week running a culture analysis, using Eleanor's confidential survey tools. The results were brutal. 90% of the staff reported verbal abuse. He was a tyrant, but that was not all. I audited the donations. He was routing small, untraceable cash donations into a personal, discretionary fund. I did not present the surveys. I did not mention the abuse. I presented a single, 2-page report showing the financial leak. I showed the map. The board fired him by the end of the day. The staff was saved. The culture detox began. My graduation, the test that allowed me to go solo, was a contract with a high-end chip design firm in the Research Triangle. It was a referral from Eleanor, but she was not on the project. It was all me. The problem was a leak. A competitor, smaller but aggressive, had beaten them to market with an almost identical design 3 times in 1 year. They were convinced a high-level executive was a corporate spy. I spent 2 weeks there. I interviewed the entire C-suite. Nothing. No scent, no vibration. They were clean, just frustrated. The company was ready to fire its head of engineering. They were desperate for a scapegoat, just like my family. On my last day, I was packing my laptop in the cafeteria. A mid-level engineer, a quiet woman, sat near me, crying into her phone. She was not on my list. She was not high level. But as I passed her, the smell hit me like a physical blow, that sharp, acidic tang of deceit. Sent. The leak is not from an executive. It is from this random, crying engineer. Hypothesis. She is not a spy. She is emotionally compromised. The leak is unintentional. Audit. This was the map. I could not access her phone. I could not access her email, but I could access public records. I checked her social media. Nothing. I checked visitor logs for the past 6 months. Nothing. I checked her LinkedIn, her friends, her network, and there it was. Her new boyfriend. The one she had been posting gushing photos with for the last 8 months, was a senior marketing director at the rival company. It was not corporate espionage. It was pillow talk. She was boasting about her team's breakthroughs to a man who was carrying those secrets straight to his own design team. I presented my findings. A simple, one-page report, no emotion. Just the public data points, the social media connection, the timeline of the leaks, and the timeline of the relationship. The engineer was quietly terminated. The leak stopped. My invoice was paid in full, with a 5-figure bonus. 2 years ago, I founded North Star Insight Lab. I am a consultant. I am a one-woman firm. I work entirely remotely from a secure server. My clients are CEOs, board chairs, and venture capital firms who need to know what is really happening inside a company before they buy it or before it collapses. I am the cultural due diligence expert. I am the pre-merger risk auditor. I am the ghost who finds the map. My income last year was more than my father has made in the last 3. My family has no idea. As far as they are concerned, I am still morbid Corinne, the quiet failure, the family curse, working some vague, low-level data entry job from my small apartment in Raleigh. They prefer that narrative. It keeps their world stable. I let them have it. I am not the girl who smells smoke anymore. I am the woman who builds the fire map. I live by Eleanor's final, most important rule. Don't declare, prove, and I was proving, every single day, that I was right. I was just waiting for the right room to present the audit. The announcement came, as all Blake family announcements did, on a Sunday. It was not a celebration. It was a press conference. My parents' house was buffed to a high gloss, the air thick with the scent of my mother's lilies and my father's ambition. My mother, Mary Ann, was vibrating with a success that was not hers. My father, Philip, was practicing his at ease but still in charge laugh. Then Madison walked in. She was wearing a white dress, an aggressively preemptive strike of bridal white, and she was clinging to the arm of a man who looked less like a person and more like a concept. He was the concept of future CEO. He was tall. He had a perfect casual tan that spoke of expensive off-season vacations. His teeth were a blinding porcelain white advertisement for cosmetic dentistry. The watch on his wrist was subtle, but it was the kind of subtle that cost more than my car. "Everyone," Madison announced, her voice pitching to a level designed to shatter glass. "I have the most incredible news. This is Cole Harrington, and we're engaged." The name landed in the room like a 1,000-pound weight. Harrington. My father visibly brightened. He straightened his tie. Harrington, as in Harrington and Sons, the shipping and logistics empire, the old solid, unshakable Charleston money. This was it. This was the image my father had craved his entire life. This was the merger. "Harrington," my father boomed, stepping forward, his hand outstretched, his performance laugh hitting its full volume. "A profound pleasure. Philip Blake, I know your father's work. A pillar of the community." "Mr. Blake," Cole said. His voice was smooth, deep, and perfectly modulated. His handshake was firm, practiced. He charmed my mother, complimenting the house. He talked about the market with my father, effortlessly. He was perfect. He was a flawless, charming machine. Then it was my turn. I was in my usual spot. The armchair in the corner. The observer's post. They turned to me as one. "Corinne," my sister said, her voice a weapon dipped in honey. "You remember Cole?" I had met him once, briefly. I stood. "Cole," I said. "Congratulations." "Corinne," he said, smiling that $1,000,000 smile. He took my hand. and the world stopped. The smile, the charm, the expensive watch, it all dissolved. The smell hit me like a physical blow. It was not the simple, acidic tang of Mr. Keaton's small-time fraud. This was bigger. This was the smell of a copper mine, a vast, cavernous, hollowed-out void. It was the smell of rot, of something structurally compromised, eaten from the inside. It was cold. There was nothing there. He was a shell. And the smell of decay, of wet, metallic rust, was pouring off him. I pulled my hand back. "It's a pleasure," I said. My voice was steady. Scent acquired. I found Madison in the kitchen 20 minutes later. I was rinsing my glass, my standard escape maneuver. So, she demanded, leaning against the marble countertop. She was vibrating, high on her own success. "Isn't he perfect? He's the future CEO of Harrington and Sons. They're everything. He's giving me everything I deserve." "He's polished," I said. I chose my words with surgical precision. "The Harrington name is significant. It's a powerful brand." "You're damn right it is," she said. "Madison," I said, my voice quiet. "Just be smart." Her eyes narrowed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means a name is not a balance sheet. Before you merge, just check the fundamentals. Ask about the cash flow. Family companies can be complicated." Her face, which had been bright with triumph, hardened into a familiar, ugly mask of contempt. You are unbelievable." She did not raise her voice. She lowered it, which was always more dangerous. "Check the cash flow?" she hissed. "I finally have something perfect, something real, something you could never, ever have. And you have to come in here and spray your poison. You have to be the curse. You just can't stand it." "This is not about jealousy, Madison. This is about—" "It's always about jealousy with you," she snapped. "You are jealous of my happiness. You are jealous that I'm winning, and you're nothing. You're just a morbid, jealous, lonely thing. Go back to your sad little apartment. I am getting married." She stormed out, leaving the scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the air. Scent confirmed. Hypothesis. The Harrington Empire is a facade. Cole Harrington is not a future CEO. He is a liability, and he is seeking a bailout. My family is the target. The invitation arrived at my apartment in Raleigh 3 months later. It was a monstrosity. It was not an envelope. It was a box. Inside, a slab of cream-colored cardstock so thick it felt like a small book. It was embossed. It was laced with gold leaf. It was sealed with a custom wax stamp of their intertwined initials. It was a performance of wealth, and it was suffocating. Tucked inside, on a small, separate card, was a note in Madison's spiky, impatient handwriting. "Corinne, just you? No VIP? Don't make it weird." The 3-part command. Just you? No +1? Fine. No VIP? A deliberate, calculated slight. A reminder of my status, distinguishing me from the real guests who would be at the VIP tables. And the threat? Don't make it weird. Do not be yourself. Do not be the curse. Do not ruin my perfect day. My first instinct was to burn it. I would send a polite regret and a mid-range toaster. It was a setup. I was being invited specifically to be the family failure, the drab gray backdrop to her glittering white day. I called Eleanor. I did not intend to bring it up, but it came out. "I'm thinking of skipping my sister's wedding. It's a hostile environment." There was a dry, papery sound on the other end of the line. Eleanor, shuffling reports. "Hostile environments," she said, her voice flat, "are just data-rich environments. Why would you skip? You don't hide from the data. Corinne, you observe, you go, you sit, you listen, and you watch. Let them show you exactly who they are." She paused. "Just be prepared." The call ended. Be prepared. That, I understood. I began my audit. My preparation was not emotional. It was methodical. First, I checked the law. Charleston, South Carolina, a one-party consent state. It is perfectly legal to record any conversation in a public space, like a hotel ballroom, as long as you are part of that conversation or it is done in the open. I downloaded a high-fidelity, studio-grade audio recording app to my phone. I tested it. I set the file management to upload every captured file directly to a secure, encrypted cloud server. This was not a trap. This was a notebook. This was documentation. Second, the gift. I went to their online registry. It was a monument to their greed. I scrolled past the endless silver, the designer china, the pointless electronics. I found the single most expensive item, a massive, hand-cut, European crystal serving bowl, $500. I purchased it. But I did not purchase it from the store. I funneled the purchase through a legal entity, the Shell Foundation I used for my scholarship fund. I paid the $500, and the store processed the order. But my receipt, the one I kept, was not a store receipt. It was a contract. It was a gift and charitable donation agreement. It stated that the gift, valued at $500, was presented to the couple in good faith, contingent on the standard and equitable hospitality afforded to all registered guests at the event. It had a clause, a tripwire. If the donor, Corinne Blake, was subjected to a documented denial of service, public humiliation, or differential negative treatment, the full cash value of the gift was to be immediately revoked from the couple's registry and converted into a non-refundable, binding grant for the North Star Insight Scholarship Fund. The scholarship was for women leaving toxic work environments. I filed the document in my cloud server, right next to the audio apps folder. Third, the hypothesis. I needed to test it. I needed the map. He's a shell. The empire is gone. I called Mark, a freelancer I used for deep dive corporate audits. He was the best. Mark, I said, quick one for you. Harrington and Sons? Charleston, supposedly in logistics. I need a top-level credit and registration check. See what the chatter is. He called back in 2 hours. His voice was puzzled. Corinne, this is weird. It's not that they're in trouble, it's that they don't exist. The corporate entity, Harrington and Sons, LLC, filed for dissolution 6 months ago. Voluntarily, they're gone, vanished from Dun & Bradstreet, wiped from Experian Business. Their credit lines are frozen or closed. As far as the financial world is concerned, they are a ghost. 6 months. The smell was right. The building had already collapsed. He was just walking around in the suit he had salvaged from the wreckage. I did one more search. Society pages. Cole Harrington was not a ghost. He was everywhere. Pictures from polo matches, ringside seats at a prize fight, charity balls he was not hosting but was definitely attending. He was burning cash. He was a supernova, collapsing in on himself but throwing off a brilliant, blinding light. The final piece of data, a contact at a regional bank confirmed it. Oh, the Harringtons? He said, his voice low. Yeah, total disaster. The old man leveraged everything against a fuel contract that went bust. They've been trying to liquidate assets for a year, but the contracts are all being canceled last minute. They're toxic. The family name is the only thing they have left, and they're riding it until the wheels come off. Audit complete. Cole Harrington was a fraud. He was Mr. Keaton, version 2, but with better hair and a much bigger burn rate. He was marrying my sister to secure a bailout. He was selling his name for my father's cash flow. My father, so desperate to align the Blake name with the Harrington legacy, was walking straight into the fire, and Madison, so desperate for her perfect life, was the fuel. I thought about telling them. I pictured the scene, me, standing in their living room. He's broke. The company is defunct. I heard my mother's response. You're morbid. Corinne. I heard Madison's, you're jealous. You're trying to ruin my life. I heard my father's, you don't understand these things. Corinne, you're just difficult. Declaring the fire only gets the person who smells the smoke blamed for the arson. Eleanor's voice, cold and clear in my head. Don't declare. Prove. Telling them now would be a declaration. It would be rejected. They would close ranks. They would protect the image at all costs. They would push the wedding through faster, just to prove me wrong. I could not stop it. So I would observe. I packed my dark blue dress. I charged my phone. I backed up the file on the crystal bowl. I would stay silent. I would be the curse. I would be the morbid, quiet sister. I would wait for the right room, the right moment. The moment when the map was the only thing that mattered. The moment they would be forced to look at the proof. The Grand Magnolia Ballroom was a performance of my father's ambition, executed with my mother's obsession for detail. It was not just a room, it was a statement. The walls were not just gold, they were suffocating in gold leaf, and the air was so thick with the scent of 1,000 white lilies it was hard to breathe. The string quartet sawed away in the corner, a frantic, glittering sound that did nothing to mask the anxiety in the room. That other scent, the one of wet pennies and rot, was back. It was coming from the head table, a cloud of it rolling off the groom. The seating chart was the first checkpoint. It was exactly what the outline had promised. A comically enormous, floor-standing mirror in a gaudy rococo frame. My mother's signature piece. Guests were clustered around it, checking their reflections as much as their table numbers. Image, always image. I found my name at the very bottom, in small, tight script, segregated from the rest of the list. Corinne Blake, table 27. I began the walk, my heels, the sensible ones, sank into the plush carpet. I passed table 4, filled with my father's banking colleagues, their laughter loud and forced. I passed table 9, my mother's inner circle from the Charity League, their diamonds catching the light, their eyes cataloging every dress in the room. The numbers climbed, the air grew warmer, the scent of lilies gave way to something industrial and hot. The sound of the quartet faded, replaced by the rhythmic thump and clank of metal on metal, and the rising, humid odor of steamed fish and sour washcloths. And there it was, table 27. It was not a table, it was a punishment. It was shoved into a dark alcove, a no-man's land between the swinging metal door of the main kitchen and a red glowing fire exit. Every few seconds, that kitchen door would burst open with a pneumatic sigh. Psst, clang, blasting the alcove with a wave of wet heat, the clatter of pans, and the high, frantic shouts of the line cooks. The table itself was a circle of cheap, dark laminate, set for one. It was naked. Every other table in the ballroom was draped in heavy ivory linen, crowned with a towering arrangement of lilies and roses. This one was bare. There was no plate, no folded napkin, no water glass, no champagne flute, no heavy, silver-plated knife, fork, or spoon. It was just a single, lonely chair, facing the wall. A young waiter, barely 20, hurried past, his face slick with sweat. He was carrying a heavy silver tray of appetizers. He swerved to avoid me, the tray rattling. "Excuse me," I said. He stopped, startled. "Ma'am?" "There is a mistake," I said, my voice perfectly flat, pointing at the empty wood. "There is no place setting at this table." He looked at the table, then at me, his face filled with a deep, profound, and utterly unprofessional pity. It was the look he would give to a lost child. "Oh," he said. He fumbled with the master clipboard tucked under his arm. Table 27? Blake?" "Yes." He ran his finger down the list. He was not a good actor. I watched his shoulders tense. He knew. "What does it say?" I asked. He swallowed, his eyes darting back to the kitchen door as if hoping for an escape. He knew he was trapped between a guest and his manager. He turned the clipboard. He did not need to. I could read it from where I stood. Next to my name, in spiky, angry, handwritten ink, not a printed directive, but a last-minute, personal one, was the memo. Table 27. Self-managed. 0 meals. The 0 was a circle, drawn twice. "Ma'am," the waiter whispered, his voice cracking. I don't know what to..." What does self-managed mean? I asked. It means no service, he said, the words spilling out in a rush of shame. No plate? No meal? That's the instruction. They're counting the plates. The bride's father, Mr. Blake, he was very, very clear the count had to be exact. He said not one plate over. I'm sorry. I could try to get you a bread roll? He looked like he was about to cry. No, I said. Thank you. You have been very clear. Deliberate harm. This was not an oversight. This was not a mistake. This was a plan. My father's specific instruction on the plate count, my mother's approval of the seating chart, and Madison's handwritten memo. The tripwire, the one I had set on the $500 crystal bowl, had just been activated. The donation was now legally a scholarship. They just did not know it yet. Of course, she had been watching. A predator always waits for the prey to see the trap. Corinne! Madison's voice was a high, saccharine trill. She swept over, a magnificent $20,000 cloud of white tulle and lace, her face a perfect mask of bridal joy. Her eyes, however, were cold and sharp, and they were not looking at me. They were looking at the empty table. Checking the damage. Oh my God, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. Did they forget your plate? I did not answer. I just looked at her. She leaned in, a conspiratorial, sisterly gesture. The performance was for the nearby tables. Her perfume was overpowering, a mix of roses and something sharp, like alcohol. Honestly, she whispered, the trill vanishing, replaced by the flat, bored tone of her childhood malice. It's for the best. I mean, the catering is $200 a plate. I can't just waste a plate on you. You barely eat. We all have to make sacrifices. She wanted a reaction. She wanted tears. She wanted me to make a scene, to beg, to fulfill my role as the curse who ruined her perfect day. I gave her nothing. I was a mirror. I was a camera lens. Recording data. Click, my phone, in my clutch, was open. The audio app was running. The file was being saved. The public, one-party consent of a ballroom. Leave the gift with the coordinator, she said, patting my arm, her nails digging in slightly. And don't make it weird. Just go. She turned, her dress swishing, and glided back toward the head table, a conquering hero. I looked for my parents. They were at table 1, the royal dais. They were watching, or rather, they had been. The second I turned to look, my father, Philip, became intensely interested in the Cabernet in his glass, swirling it, studying it, his face a mask of judicial concentration. My mother, Marianne, turned her head with a sharp, bird-like jerk to say something to the groom's mother. Their avoidance was a confession. They saw, they knew. They approved. The plan was complete. I became aware of a new sound. Laughter, shrill and female. One of the bridesmaids, Jessica, was a few feet away. Her phone held high. She was filming a story, a stupid panning shot of the ballroom. "Best wedding ever!" she shrieked, her voice slurring. "Everything is so perfect. Look at my bestie." The camera panned. It captured the glittering, laughing guests. It passed over me, standing alone by the kitchen door. It panned right across the barren, naked, humiliating expanse of table 27. The video did not lie. It was 2 seconds long, an accident, but the evidence was now in the cloud. I had everything I needed, the scent, the hypothesis, and now, the audit. I picked up my small clutch purse. I did not bother to sit down. "Where are you going?" It was Madison, calling from her throne, her voice sharp. The fun was over. Her prop was leaving. I did not turn. I just started walking. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice not loud, but clear. I walked past the laughing bridesmaid. I walked past the pitying waiter. I walked out of the heat and the smell of the kitchen. The ballroom was a sea of faces, all blurred. I kept my eyes on the exit. The 2 massive, gold-plated doors at the far end of the hall. I could feel their eyes on my back. My father's, full of annoyance, My mother's, full of shame, not for what she did, but for the fact that I was creating a new image she could not control. The string quartet was building to a crescendo. I reached the doors. I pushed one open. The sound from the ballroom was instantly sucked away, replaced by the cool, dead silence of the marble lobby. I was 1 foot out, 1 foot in the quiet, clean air, and in that sudden, muffled silence, a new sound, a man's voice, not my father's, not the groom's. It was from the head table, a bellow of pure, undiluted rage that cut through the music, through the doors, through the entire, glittering facade. She's right. The quartet stopped. A violin squawked, then went silent. I stopped, my hand on the brass handle of the door. I turned, every head in the room, all 300 of them, was swiveling as one, not toward me, toward the head table. The show had just begun. I was still in the doorway, my hand on the brass handle. The ballroom was a frozen tableau, a photograph of a disaster. The music was dead. 300 pairs of eyes were fixed on the head table, where a man was standing. It was Noah Harrington, Cole's older brother, the best man. He was still holding his champagne flute, and he raised it, not to the room, but to me. A brief, almost imperceptible salute. "She's right," he said again, his voice lower now, but it sliced through the silence of the vast, gold-leafed room. "She should leave." He was not drunk. This was not an outburst. This was a scheduled demolition. He was perfectly, terrifyingly calm, and his eyes were full of a cold, controlled fury that had been simmering for a long time. "Noah!" Cole hissed. He jumped to his feet, knocking over his own chair with a muffled thump on the thick carpet. "What the hell are you doing? Sit down. You're drunk." "I'm not drunk, Cole," Noah said. He set his glass down on the table with a precise, quiet click. He looked past Cole, past my weeping sister, directly at my father. "Mr. Blake, you should be thanking this woman. She seems to be the only person in your family with the integrity to walk out of this farce." "Security!" my father roared. His face, which had been pale with confusion, was now a deep, blotchy purple. He was on his feet, pointing, his authority, his control of the image, slipping. "Get this man out of here. He's ruining everything." "Everything?" Noah's voice was dangerously smooth. He picked up the table's microphone, the one meant for the best man's speech. The pop of it turning on echoed through the room like a gunshot. "You're worried about me ruining it? You think this is a wedding?" He addressed the room. He was a natural speaker, his voice resonating with a lifetime of boardrooms and authority. "Good evening, everyone. You are all here to celebrate the union of two great families, the Blakes and the Harringtons." He laughed, a single bitter bark that was devoid of all humor. "I am the groom's brother, the best man, and I am here to tell you the truth. There is no Harrington family left to join." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Harrington and Sons, the company, the legacy, the name you are all so impressed by, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 6 months ago. It is liquidated. It is gone. It does not exist." If the room had been silent before, it was now a vacuum. I could hear the hiss of the air conditioning. I heard a single, heavy, silver fork clatter onto a plate at a nearby table. At table 9, my mother's entire world, her charity circle, was staring, their faces frozen in identical masks of horror. This was not just a scandal. It was a financial scandal. It was poor. My mother's hand flew to her pearls, her knuckles white. "He's lying!" Cole shouted, his voice cracking, reaching a desperate, adolescent pitch. He lunged for the microphone, but Noah simply turned his shoulder, blocking him. "He's lying. He's just jealous. He has always been jealous of me." "Jealous?" Noah said, and for the first time, his voice was laced with fire. "Jealous of what? Cole? That you haven't held a real job in over a year? That you've been liquidating our father's pension fund to pay for your bar tabs? That you've been living off the last dregs of our family's reputation while I have been the one fielding calls from creditors? He turned back to my father. Did you know that, Mr. Blake, the man marrying your daughter is unemployed? This entire event, this room, the $20,000 dress, the champagne tower, it's a play. It is a desperate, last-ditch con. And you are the mark. He is marrying your daughter for a bailout. Cole? It was Madison. Her voice was a tiny, broken whisper. She was staring at him, her face a ruin. The perfect mask had not just cracked, it had shattered. Her eyes were wide, her mouth open, her breath coming in short, gasping sobs. The mascara she had cried over during the vows was now running in thick, black rivers down her cheeks. Cole? What is he? What is he talking about? Cole ignored her. He was staring at my father, his face pale, his mask of charm gone, revealing the hollow, terrified rot beneath. And then I saw it, the modern response to drama. At table 4, a banker who worked with my father slowly raised his phone. The little red light came on. Then, at table 9, a woman from my mother's charity league did the same. And then, like a wave, a sea of phones rose. The glittering, opulent ballroom was suddenly filled with dozens of small, red recording lights, all pointed at the head table. The humiliation was being documented. It was being archived. You don't believe me? Noah continued, his voice calm, projecting to his new, wider audience. You think this is just jealousy? He reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out his own phone. Then let's hear from the groom himself. An email Cole sent to me last night at 3:15 in the morning, after his bachelor party. I believe his judgment was impaired. He tapped the screen, angled it toward the microphone, and read. His voice was cold, clear, and precise. Subject, stop fighting me. Body, this is it. Man, I'm telling you, just need to get through tonight. Just gotta get the ring on her finger, and I am set for life. Her old man is loaded. We're back, baby. A collective, horrified gasp filled the room. A woman at a front table actually shrieked. Oh my God! A man at a table near the front said, his voice carrying clearly. All eyes swiveled to him. He looked pale, but he also looked angry. He was one of Madison's bosses, a senior partner at her law firm. He's right. He looked at his wife, then back at the head table. I'm in compliance. I just ran the business code on my phone. He held his phone up. The state charter for Harrington and Sons was dissolved. Their corporate code is inactive. They're gone. He's telling the truth. The audit was complete. The map was public. Cole's face collapsed. The panic was total. This was it. The end. He grabbed Madison's arm, yanking her so hard she stumbled. Come on, he hissed, his voice a raw panic. We're leaving. He tried to drag her toward the side exit, the one near the kitchens, the one I had been banished to. But Noah stepped down from the dais. He was bigger than Cole, more solid. He had the quiet, immovable strength of a man who had been cleaning up his brother's messes his entire life. He planted himself in their path. No, Noah said, his voice low and final. You don't get to run, Cole. Not this time. You wanted this stage. You wanted this audience. You are not dragging another person down with you. He looked at his brother with a lifetime of exhaustion and contempt. There is no family left to hide behind. You're done. The room was frozen. Cole, trapped between his furious brother and his broken bride. My father, speechless, his authority gone. My mother, a statue of porcelain, cracked from head to toe, and all the phones, still recording. The silence stretched, thick and toxic, filled with the smell of wet pennies. Everyone was waiting. The first bomb had landed, and the damage was absolute, and I knew, with the certainty of a compass needle finding north, that the second one was already on its way. The room was a vacuum, a singularity of shared humiliation. Centered on the head table, every phone was raised. Every lens focused on the tableau of the trapped, fraudulent groom and the weeping bride. The silence was so total, so absolute, that the scrape of a chair on the parquet floor sounded like an explosion. It was not from the head table. It was from table 3, the VIP table, the one my father had reserved for the guests he actually valued, the ones he wanted to impress with his new Harrington connection. A man stood up. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with iron gray hair and a quiet, solid presence that instantly negated the frantic, hollow energy of my father. He wore an impeccable, conservative dark suit, not a tuxedo. He looked like a man who did not need to perform. I knew him. His name was Victor Hale. Victor Hale was the CEO of Hale Industrial, a massive manufacturing and logistics company based in North Carolina. He was, to my father, the ultimate prize, old school, powerful, and respected. Philip Blake had been trying to get a business meeting with him for over a year. He had clearly invited Victor tonight as a power play, a way to show him that the Blakes were aligning with the Harrington empire. Victor looked at the wreckage at the head table, at Noah, standing guard, at Cole, pale and trembling, at my sister, a ruin of white tulle. His expression was one of profound, quiet disappointment. Then, his gaze swept the room, past the hundreds of stunned, silent faces. He found me. I was still standing by the main exit, my hand on the brass door handle, a ghost caught halfway between worlds. His eyes locked on mine. He did not smile. He simply acknowledged me. Then he raised his voice. It was not a shout, like Noah's. It was a deep, resonant baritone, a voice accustomed to addressing shareholders, a voice that carried the effortless weight of authority. "I am here tonight," he announced, his voice filling the vacuum, "because I was invited by Philip Blake." At the head table, my father's head snapped up. His face was a mask of confusion and desperate hope. He saw a lifeline. He thought Victor Hale was standing up for him. "But I accepted that invitation," Victor continued, his eyes still fixed on me. "For one reason, and one reason only." He lifted his hand, not pointing, but indicating, a gesture of respect. "I came here for Corinne." The pivot was instantaneous. Every single phone in the room, all those little red recording lights, turned away from the head table. They swung in a slow, massive arc, turning from the bride and groom to me, the girl by the kitchen door, and to Victor Hale, the man on the dance floor. The narrative of the night tilted on its axis. Victor took 2 steps away from his table, into the open space. He was the center of the room now. He looked directly at my parents. "Philip, Marianne," he said. His voice was not accusatory. It was heavy, weighted with a moral gravity that made my father's ambition seem cheap and thin. "I have listened to you for years at various functions. I have heard you talk about your clubs, your new car, your daughters, successes." He gestured toward Madison. "But I must tell you, you must be the 2 proudest parents in this room tonight." "Proud?" my father stammered. He looked completely lost. This was not the script. "Victor, I don't understand." "I'm talking about your other daughter," Victor said, and this time he gestured, clearly to me. "I am talking about the fact that Corinne Blake saved the jobs of 420 people at my main plant." A new sound rippled through the room, a shocked, inhaled gasp. 420. That was not an abstract number. It was a factory. It was payroll. In this room full of bankers, lawyers, and business owners, that number was real. "We were in trouble," Victor said, his voice simple, direct, as if he were giving testimony. "A private equity firm from New York was trying to buy us out. They looked perfect on paper. Their numbers were flawless. Their charm was impeccable." He glanced at Cole. "Sound familiar?" My own team was convinced. I was convinced. But something smelled wrong. I brought in a consultant. She insisted, as a final check, that I use her top analyst. She sent me Corinne. The sea of phones was now trained on me. I did not move. I did not flinch. I just stood, my hand on the door, and let them look. Corinne Blake, Victor continued, flew in. She sat in one, single, 6-hour board meeting. She did not say one word. She just watched. She listened. She read the negative space. My father's mouth was open. My mother looked like she was seeing a ghost. The next morning, Victor said, she sent me a 3-page report. That's it, 3 pages. It was not an opinion. It was not a feeling. It was an audit. It was a map. She had cross-referenced their previous acquisitions with public severance filings. She proved their model was not investment. It was asset stripping. They were planning to leverage the company, inflate the price to secure the bank loans, and then carve up the pension fund and sell the physical plant for scrap. They would have walked away with a $50 million profit, leaving the bank with the debt and 420 of my people, my family, on the street. He looked at me, a flash of genuine gratitude in his eyes. 3 pages. She saved my company. She saved my father's legacy. The silence in the room was no longer shock. It was awe. The smell of wet pennies and rot from the head table was suddenly gone, burned away by the clean, bright light of the truth. Victor Hale turned back to me. Corinne, he said, his voice projecting across the floor, I have been trying to steal you from Eleanor Pike for a year. That strategic partnership offer I sent your office last week, the one your assistant said you were considering, it is still on the table. It is waiting for you. You come to my office on Monday morning, and we will finalize it. Whatever you want. Name your price. The girl from table 27. The zero-meal guest. The family curse. I had just been offered a strategic partnership, with a blank check, in front of the entire social and financial infrastructure of Charleston. The buzz was electric. The phones were still up. The story was no longer just groom is a fraud. The story was the girl by the kitchen door is a goddamn strategic genius. It was Madison. Her voice was a choked, wet, pathetic sound. She was trying to stand, clinging to the table, her dress stained with champagne. She's lying. He's lying. She works from home. She does data entry. She's nothing. Victor Hale looked at my sister, the ruined bride on her ruined dais, and for the first time, his face showed a flicker of pity. It was the same expression the young waiter had given me. Ma'am, Victor said, and his voice was gentle now, but impossibly firm. Corinne Blake works wherever she wants to work. She does that, because she is just that good. That was the final blow. As one, the camera lenses, those dozens of phones, pivoted. They turned away from me. They swung, in a slow, synchronized, brutal arc, onto my parents. They zoomed in. They captured my father, Philip Blake, his mouth hanging open, his face a mask of utter, profound devastation. The image he had worshipped his entire life had just been publicly revealed as a counterfeit. He had spent the night worshipping a fraudulent name and banishing his single greatest asset to the kitchen. And they captured my mother, Marianne. She was not moving. She was not crying. She was broken. Her face was chalk white. Her eyes were wide and blank, staring at nothing. The correct form she had built her life around had just been proven to be a hollow, empty, worthless vessel. The image was gone. The curse was a CEO in waiting. Her entire world, her entire value system, had been exposed as a lie. The cracks I had always heard were now visible to everyone. At a table near the back, a man I did not recognize slipped his phone into his pocket and took out a small, old-fashioned reporter's notebook. He was the society columnist for the local paper, invited to cover the wedding of the year. He was scribbling, his pen flying across the page. I heard him mutter to the woman beside him, "Forget the groom. This is the real story." Victor Hale had presented his audit. He was done. He did not wait for applause. He did not look at my parents again. He simply nodded, a single, sharp gesture of finality, and began to walk. He walked past the stunned, silent tables. He walked past the wreckage of the head table. He walked directly toward me. He stopped when he reached the doorway. Standing in front of me, the room was watching, but we were in our own space. He was close enough that no one could hear him. He gently, briefly, put his hand on my shoulder. His hand was warm and solid. "Don't let them do this to you. Corinne," he whispered. His eyes were kind. "Monday, my office, 10 o'clock. He squeezed my shoulder once, a gesture of solidarity. And then he was gone. He turned, walked out of the ballroom, and disappeared into the cool, quiet marble of the lobby. He left me alone. Standing on the threshold, in the wreckage he had helped reveal, Victor Hale was gone. The lobby door swung shut behind him, and the silence he left in his wake was heavier, more toxic than anything that had come before. He had been the second bomb, and now the room was just radioactive fallout. The 300 guests, the sea of phones, were still frozen. They were no longer just recording a family argument. They had just witnessed a public execution and a corporate coronation, all in the span of 3 minutes. The narrative of the night had been stolen from the bride and groom and handed to me. I was still at the doorway. The entire, massive, gold-leafed room was staring at me, at my parents, and at the wreckage of the head table. Madison was the first to break. It was not a cry. It was a sound I had not heard since she was a toddler, a raw, primal, guttural shriek of pure, animalistic rage, the sound of a creature that has been cornered and knows it. "Liars!" Her voice cracked, echoing off the high, gilded ceiling. She was staring at the empty space where Victor Hale had stood. "He's lying. They're all lying." She spun to Cole. He was still trapped, standing between his brother and the dais. "Cole, tell them. Tell them he's lying. Tell them about the company." Cole looked at her. His face was a mask of gray, clammy sweat. The charm was gone. The charisma was gone. There was nothing left but the hollowed-out rot I had smelled from the very beginning. He said nothing. He just stared at his brother, Noah, his eyes wide with a terror that was absolute. He did not deny it. He could not. And that silence, his silence, was the final confirmation. It was the last crack. "No," Madison whispered. She looked at Cole's silence. She looked at my father, who was staring at me in disbelief. She looked at my mother, who was staring at her friends at table 9, watching them whisper, watching her image dissolve in real time. No one was coming to save her. "No," she said again, louder. Her eyes, wild and black with ruined mascara, scanned the room. She was looking for something to destroy, something to make her pain physical. Her gaze landed on the wedding cake. It was a masterpiece of my mother's ambition, a 5-foot-tall, 3-tiered monument of perfect, smooth, white fondant and handcrafted sugar lilies, a symbol of the perfect union. "No!" With a scream that ripped from her throat, Madison lunged. She did not just bump the table. She grabbed the edge of the linen, and with all her strength, she pulled. The entire table tipped. The cake, all 3 tiers, all 100 pounds of it, teetered for one agonizing second. It hung in the air, a monument to a lie, and then it collapsed. It did not just fall. It imploded. It hit the parquet dance floor with a heavy, wet, sickening thud. The sound was muffled. A dense, final end to the fantasy. A cloud of sugar, flour, and buttercream frosting misted into the air. But she was not done. The chaos had just begun. She turned to the head table, her hands balled into fists, and she began to sweep. She grabbed a full, unopened bottle of champagne, the expensive kind my father had insisted on, and she hurled it. It flew across the dance floor and struck the marble edging. The sound was not a pop, it was an explosion. A crack of glass followed by a shatter that rained crystalline shards across the floor. That was the sound that broke the spell. The guests were no longer an audience. They were in danger. "She's throwing glass!" a woman shrieked from table 4. It was panic. Pure, mass panic. Women in high heels hiked up their expensive gowns. Men grabbed their wives' arms. Chairs scraped and crashed backward as guests scrambled to get away from the dance floor, away from the glass, away from the screaming, collapsing bride. In the sudden surge of chaos, I saw Cole move. This was his chance. He did not run. He retreated. He saw the path of bodies fleeing toward the main exits, and he saw the empty space near the service corridor, my corridor. He slipped behind a large floral arrangement, and in a second, he was gone, disappearing through the clang of the kitchen doors, a coward, vanishing into the steam and the smell of fish. The 2 hotel security guards my father had bellowed for finally arrived, pushing through the terrified crowd. They saw the chaos. They saw the broken glass. They saw the weeping, hysterical bride covered in cake. And they saw the one calm, solid man at the center of it all, Noah Harrington. They did what they were trained to do. They neutralized the perceived threat. "Sir," one of them said, grabbing Noah's arm, "you need to come with us, right now." Noah did not resist. He did not fight. He had done what he came to do. He nodded, his face a mask of grim, exhausted satisfaction. As they led him away, his eyes found mine across the room. It was a look of shared, bitter understanding. The audit was complete. I turned my gaze from the exiting hero to my mother. Marianne Blake was not watching the chaos. She was not watching her daughter or the fleeing guests. She was frozen. Her head turned toward table 9. She was watching her entire social life, her heritage circle, her friends, all whispering, their faces masks of pity and morbid glee. She was witnessing her own social execution. She did not faint. She simply broke. She sank down into her chair. A puppet whose strings had all been cut at once. Her spine, that rigid steel rod of correct form, was gone. She was a heap of expensive silk and useless pearls. Her hand was fluttering at her throat, and I could read her lips, even from across the room. My honor, it's gone. My honor. She was a casualty of her own, hollow religion. And then, my father. Philip Blake was not a man to collapse. He was a man to calculate. He looked at his broken wife. He looked at his screaming, cake-smeared daughter. He looked at the fleeing, terrified guests. He looked at the dozens of phones still, incomprehensibly, recording. This was not a social embarrassment. This was a financial default, a catastrophic, public-facing, unrecoverable loss. He knew, in that moment, where the last, remaining asset in the room was. He turned, and he began to walk toward me. He did not run. He forced himself to walk, dragging the anchor of his own humiliation across the entire vast expanse of the ballroom. The remaining cameras, the dedicated few, pivoted. They followed him, this new narrative thread. He crossed the dance floor, stepping over a smear of buttercream. He stopped 5 feet in front of me, in the doorway, blocking my exit. His face was a ruin. The blotchy, ambitious purple was gone. He was gray, ashen. The skin under his eyes looked thin and papery. He looked, for the first time in his life, old and weak.
"Corinne," he said. His voice was not a boom. It was a dry scraping sound, a rasp from a hollowed-out chest. "Corinne, I...
He was trying to form the words. He was a banker, desperately trying to find the currency that would stop the bleeding. I am so sorry," he choked out. He was actually weeping, tears of desperation rolling down his cheeks. This is a terrible misunderstanding." I looked at him. I did not feel anger. I did not feel hate. I did not even feel the cold satisfaction of victory. I felt nothing. I felt the clear, cold, absolute zero of an audit finally closed. "Don't," I said. My voice was quiet. It was not a whisper. It was a flat line. It cut through his fabricated grief and stopped him cold. He flinched, his head jerking back as if I had slapped him. "This was not a misunderstanding," I said, my voice as hard and precise as a diamond. "This was a choice. I let the word hang in the air between us, a choice. I watched his face. I saw the calculation stop. I saw the recognition click into place. He knew what I meant. He knew that I knew. He was back at the head table, an hour ago, leaning toward my mother, his voice low but carrying. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe she should just go. He understood. He knew I had heard him. He knew I was aware that he had seen the empty table, that he had heard Madison's plan, and that he had agreed. He had made a calculated choice to sacrifice me, the curse, to protect the image of his perfect merger. His apology was not remorse. It was a lie. It was a desperate, last-ditch attempt to manage his difficult asset, to reset the narrative. And I had just refused the transaction. His face, which had been crumpled in a performance of grief, went utterly, terrifyingly blank. I did not give him another word. I turned my back on him. I took one step, and then another, slowly. My back was straight. My head was high. This was not a retreat. This was an exit. The remaining guests parted for me. I walked past the clusters of whispering onlookers. I walked past the women clutching their pearls. I walked past the men, their phones finally lowering, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. I walked across the ruined dance floor. I walked past the glittering, treacherous shards of shattered glass. I walked past the corpse of the three-tiered wedding cake, a monument of sugar and delusion, now just an expensive, smeared pile of garbage on the floor. I walked toward the main gold-plated doors. I pushed them open. The cool, humid Charleston night air hit my face. It was damp. It smelled of the river and exhaust, and the first hint of rain. It was the first clean breath I had taken in years. I was in the lobby. I was almost free. And behind me, a new sound, a shrill, piercing, electronic shriek that was louder than Madison, louder than the panic. The fire alarm. A strobe light began to flash, pulsing red, bathing the chaos I had left behind in the color of blood. The broken champagne bottle, the spilled liquid, something, some piece of the catastrophe, had triggered the building's own impartial audit. And then, a sound from the ceiling, a series of deep, hydraulic thunks. The sprinklers. A fine, lacy mist shot down, and then it became a drenching, biblical rain. It was not clean water. It was the stagnant, chemically treated, brownish water that sits in pipes for years. The screams were real now, pure, terrified panic. The quartets abandoned. Antique violins were being drowned. The $500 a plate meals were being reduced to soup. The phones vanished, tucked into pockets and purses, the recording over. I turned, one last time, and looked through the doorway. The music was gone. The lights were strobing red. I saw my mother, Marianne, still sitting, too broken to move, letting the filthy brown water rain down on her expensive dress, her hair plastered to her face. I saw my father, standing alone in the middle of the room, soaked to the skin, staring at me. And I saw Madison. She was in the center of the room, by her ruined cake. Her $20,000 dress was a sodden, gray, transparent rag, plastered to her body. The makeup was gone. She was just a cold, wet, shivering, pathetic girl, standing in a ruined room. The wedding, the image, the perfect day, was not just over, it had been extinguished, drowned by its own lies. I turned away. I did not need to see any more. I walked across the cool, silent marble lobby. My heels clicked, clicked, clicked. The sound echoed in the vast space, a counter-rhythm to the distant, muffled shriek of the alarm. I pushed through the final set of glass doors, and the sound of my footsteps disappeared into the quiet of the Charleston street. I did not sleep in Charleston. I did not wait for the alarm to stop shrieking or the sprinklers to run dry. I walked out of the Ravenel Grand, got into my rental car, and drove directly to the airport. I was on the last flight to Raleigh. Wheels up by 11:30, I landed at 2 in the morning, walked into my own apartment, and slept for exactly 4 hours. The sleep of a machine that has completed a complex task. When I woke up on Monday morning, the storm had already broken. The internet was a wildfire. It had started, as I expected, with the bridesmaid's 30-second clip, the one filmed on her phone. Someone had ripped it, titled it, and posted it. The title was, "Bride Refuses to Feed Her Own Sister, Self-Managed Table." By 9 o'clock, it had 1 million views. By noon, it was everywhere. The comments were a visceral, primal flood of outrage. But that was just the appetizer. By Monday evening, the local Charleston news, the 6 o'clock broadcast, led with it. They were not just running the viral clip. They had the story. The society reporter who had been in the back of the room, the one with the notebook, had filed his masterpiece. He had the names. He had the receipts. He had the narrative. The segment was titled, "The Wedding That Wasn't, Harrington Bankruptcy, a Ruined Bride, and the CEO Who Praised the Outcast Sister." They played it all. They had sourced the other video, the one from the banker at table 4, the one that captured the main event. They played Noah Harrington's speech. They played the audio of him reading Cole's email aloud. They had a screenshot of the compliance officer's phone, confirming the inactive corporate code for Harrington and Sons. They showed the clip of Madison, her face a mask of rage, destroying the cake. And then they contrasted it. They cut from the image of the destroyed cake to the clip of Victor Hale, standing in the middle of the room, his voice booming with authority. They played his entire magnificent testimonial. "She saved 420 jobs. She sent me a 3-page report. She reads the negative space." They ended the segment with a side-by-side. On the left, a still frame of the empty laminate, table 27. On the right, a still frame of Victor Hale, offering me a strategic partnership. The narrative was set. The media had their story. It was a perfect, brutal morality play. The consequences were immediate. Madison's law firm, the one where the compliance officer who confirmed the bankruptcy was a senior partner, did not wait. They were a company built on reputation and prestige. Madison, by Tuesday morning, was a reputational risk. She was not asked to resign. She was fired. Cole Harrington did exactly what I expected. He ran. He did not just leave Charleston. He vanished from the grid. His phone was disconnected. His social media accounts were deleted. He simply ceased to exist, leaving a mountain of debt, a shattered bride, and a stack of bills for a $500,000 wedding that my father was now solely responsible for. My phone started to vibrate at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. It did not stop. Call from Mother. I let it ring. Voicemail notification. Call from Father. I let it ring. Voicemail notification. Call from Madison. I let it ring. Voicemail notification. By noon, I had 34 missed calls. Against my better judgment, I listened to one message, my mother's. It was exactly what I expected. It was not an apology. It was a command, wrapped in a performance of hysteria. Corinne, you must pick up this phone. It's a disaster. They are saying horrible things. The video, the news, your father's partners, and Madison. Corinne, you have to fix this. The family needs you. You have to make a statement. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you were sick. You have to protect your sister. The family needs you. The family needs you. Not I am sorry, not we were wrong, but the family needs you to continue to manage our image. They saw the public approval. They saw Victor Hale's endorsement, and they wanted me to use my newfound capital to bail them out. I deleted the message, then I blocked all 3 numbers. My first call was not to them. It was to Victor Hale's private office. "Corinne," he said, his voice warm, relieved. "I was hoping you'd call. I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Victor," I said, "I am in my office, and I'm working. I'm calling to thank you." "I merely stated the facts," he said. "You changed the narrative," I replied. "You gave me the map, publicly. I will not forget it, which is why I must, respectfully, decline your offer." There was a silence. The director's chair? The director's chair, I confirmed. I am not an employee. Victor, I am an auditor. I cannot audit a company's culture if I am sitting inside it. I lose my perspective. I lose the negative space. I heard a low chuckle on the other end of the line. A cage, is it? A conflict of interest, I said. So I have a counter-proposal. I will not be your director of strategy. Instead, North Star Insight Lab will become your strategic partner, a long-term priority retainer. You will be my anchor client. I will be your outside counsel. I will be the one you call when you smell smoke, and I will be the one to find the fire. You get my brain, but my company retains its independence. The silence this time was longer. It was the sound of a man calculating. You are, he said finally, an absolute shark. Corinne Blake, I am so glad you are on my side. Send the contract. My next call was to Eleanor Pike. So, she said, her voice as dry as paper, you had a busy weekend. The Hale contract is done, I said. I have 48 new client requests in my inbox. I need to scale. I need capital. I need a real office, and I need to hire analysts. I'll provide the minority stake investment, she said, as if ordering lunch. On one condition. What? We brand the method. 1 month later, North Star Insight Lab moved out of my apartment and into a sleek, secure, and deliberately anonymous office in a glass tower in the Research Triangle. We were in the heart of the tech and biotech corridor. Eleanor Pike was a silent 30% partner. We launched 2 new, highly profitable service verticals. The first, pre-merger and acquisition risk investigation. The second, our flagship, toxic culture diagnostics. We were no longer just me. We were a firm. 3 months after that, a major national business journal ran a full-page feature. It was not about me. It was not about my family. It was about the work. The headline was, The Compass and the Map, the new face of corporate due diligence. The article praised the anonymous CEO of North Star for developing a revolutionary method for auditing the negative space and turning cultural intuition into verifiable, actionable data. It was exactly what I wanted. The work was public. I was not. The holidays approached. Christmas. I had not spoken to my parents since the wedding. The block on their numbers was still active. But a card arrived, thick, cream-colored, expensive cardstock, my mother's handwriting on the front. I opened it, a generic, pre-printed sleigh, a generic season's greetings. At the bottom, my mother had written 2 sentences. We miss you. The family should be together. We are ready to forgive and move on. We are ready to forgive. They were still performing, still casting themselves as the wounded, magnanimous victims, ready to forgive the curse that had embarrassed them. They had learned nothing. I did not write back. I did not call. I set my boundary. It was not a wall of anger. It was a clean, logical line, politeness, but distance. A week later, an email came into my new, professional North Star inbox. The name made me pause. Noah Harrington. The subject line was, Coffee? The body of the email was short. Corinne, I don't know if you remember me. I was the one with the microphone. I have spent the last few months cleaning up the legal and financial wreckage of my brother's life and my father's estate. It has been a process. I am in Raleigh for a deposition next week. I feel like I owe you an apology, or a thank you, or at the very least, a cup of coffee, a non-self-managed one. Noah. I looked at the email. It was not complicated. It was not a performance. It was not a romantic overture. It was a message from the only other person in that room who had seen the same cracks I had. He was an adult who understood that the truth, no matter how brutal, was the only thing with any real value. I typed my reply, yes. I sat in my office, the glass wall overlooking the logical, orderly campus of the Research Triangle. I thought about all those years, all that silence, all the times I had been called morbid, a curse, a freak, for seeing the rot under the paint. My family had taught me that silence was weakness. that it was an empty negative space. They were wrong. Silence is not empty. It is a container. It is the space you use to observe, to gather data, to build the map. Silence is not weakness. It is power, held in reserve, waiting for the right room. It had been weeks of silence. I had returned to Raleigh, to my new, sterile, efficient office. I had finalized the contract with Victor Hale, and the North Star Insight Lab client list was exploding. The work was clean. The data was verifiable. Then, one Tuesday, a call came through to my business line, bypassing the block on my personal phone. It was my father. Corinne, his voice was strained, thin, a poor imitation of its former booming confidence. Your mother and I, we would like you to come to Charleston this Sunday for dinner. I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, a tactic I had learned from Eleanor. Let the other side fill the void. We need to talk. Corinne, he stammered. We want to apologize, properly, just the family, in the house, a quiet dinner. I felt it, the telltale, the faint, familiar, acidic tang of wet pennies. This was not an apology. This was a summons. This was not a dinner. It was an ambush. All right, I said, my voice flat. This Sunday. What time? I went, but I did not go unprepared. I spent Saturday preparing my audit. Eleanor's voice in my head. You don't hide from the data. You observe, and you always bring your own map. The house was dark when I arrived. The bright, performative cheer of my childhood was gone. The high-gloss floors seemed dull. My mother answered the door. Her eyes were puffy, and she was not wearing her pearls. She looked smaller. They were in the kitchen, the same kitchen. My father sat at the head of the table, and Madison was there, a ghost in a gray sweatshirt, her hair lank, her face pale and pinched. She did not look at me. There was no food. Corinne, my father began, his hands clasped on the polished wood. Thank you for coming. You said this was an apology dinner, I said, not sitting. I placed my leather briefcase on the floor beside me. It is, he said, too quickly. Corinne, we are in trouble. He slid a thick, stapled document across the table. It was not a menu. It was a contract, embossed with the crest of the Ravenel Grand. This, he said, his voice dropping, is the final bill from the hotel. The damages from the sprinklers, the food, the vendors. Cole, he vanished. He's gone. He's not liable. His signature is on the vendor guarantees, Madison whispered, her voice a dry rasp. She was staring at the table. But mine is, too. They are suing the family. Corinne, my mother said, her voice trembling, her hand fluttering at her throat. They are suing the Blake family for everything, for almost $500,000, our honor, our name. And, my father said, pushing the document closer to me, we need your help. We need you to co-sign, alone, to consolidate the debt, just a signature. Corinne, to show the family is united, to show good faith. There it was, the scent, the hypothesis, the audit. They had seen the news. They had seen Victor Hale's public offer. They had seen my success not as a victory, but as collateral. I was not the curse anymore. I was a guarantor. I did not touch their contract. I see, I said. I bent down and opened my briefcase. You're right. We should review the contracts. I brought my own. I pulled out a slim black folder. I placed it on the table. It was a stark, modern contrast to their thick, messy pile of invoices. You are worried about the hotel's documentation, I said, opening the folder. I am more interested in mine. I slid the first item across the table. It was a single, high-resolution, 8x10 glossy photograph, a printout from the bridesmaid's viral video. It showed the empty laminate table, the white, swinging kitchen door, and the handwritten sign. This, I said, is Exhibit A, Table 27, self-managed, 0 meals, a documented, premeditated denial of service. My mother flinched, as if the photo were hot. And this, I said, placing my phone on the table, is Exhibit B. I tapped the screen, and the audio file appeared. A legally obtained, time-stamped audio recording from the ballroom, a public space, where Madison explains she cannot waste a $200 plate on me. Would you like to listen? Madison's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a new kind of panic. You recorded me? I document data, Madison, I said. You know that. But this, I continued, this is the only document that truly matters. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was my copy. The gift and charitable donation agreement for the $500 crystal bowl. I slid it to my father. He grabbed it, his eyes scanning the page, hungry for a loophole. You'll see the standard language, I explained, my voice calm, like I was in a boardroom. But I draw your attention to Clause 4B, the discrimination and denial of service tripwire. What is this? My father stammered. It's a clause I drafted, I said. It states that if the donor, me, is subjected to a documented denial of service or equitable hospitality, the gift, the $500, is immediately revoked from the registry. It converts, by legal default, into a grant for the North Star Insight Scholarship Fund. A scholarship? My mother whispered, confused. That is the smallest part, I said, my voice turning to steel. The important part, subclause 4B, part 2, is that this act of discrimination also automatically triggers a binding independent, third-party audit of all vendor payments for the entire event. My father looked up, his face ashen. Why? To protect the donor, me, from being associated with a potentially fraudulent event. And I'm so glad I had that clause, because, you see, I already had my auditors run the preliminary numbers. The Ravenel Grand was very cooperative once I explained that they might be victims of fraud, too. I slid a final, single-page memo onto the table. It seems, I said, that the wedding planner, the one Cole and Madison hired, had a very creative contract. She was inflating the cost of every single vendor, the flowers, the band, the 5-tiered cake. She was inflating them by 30%, and then she was kicking back half of that inflated amount, in cash, to Cole. I let that sink in. That is civil fraud, I continued, and since Madison's signature is on those vendor contracts, she is legally, financially complicit in that fraud, whether she knew about it or not. The hotel's lawyers were fascinated by my map. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. My father was staring at the memo. My mother was gripping the edge of the table. Madison looked like she was going to be sick. So, I said, closing my folder, we have 2 options, and this is the last negotiation. Option 1, this file, my audit, stays on this table. You 3, I looked at each of them. We'll sign this. I slid over a single-page document. It is a commitment. It states you accept full responsibility for the restructured debt. It states you will make a public statement, no names, apologizing for the financial misrepresentations at the event, casting you as the primary victims of Cole's fraud. It also states that you will all attend a minimum of 3 months of family therapy, separately, to deal with the image issues that led to this. I paused. In exchange, I will not pursue the fraud case, and the hotel will work with you on a payment plan. I, of course, will not be paying 1 cent. I leaned back. Option 2, you refuse. You continue to believe this is my fault, and this entire folder, the photo, the audio, the fraud audit, goes directly to the hotel's legal team, who will then be forced to hand it to the district attorney. Your entire financial history, Dad, will become a public exhibit in a criminal fraud trial. Your honor will be itemized. Madison finally broke. You did this, she shrieked, her voice a rusted blade. You curse, You set him up. You set me up. You wanted this.
Madison, be quiet.
The voice was my father's. It was not a boom. It was not a plea. It was a command. But it was hollow, defeated. He was not looking at her. He was looking at my one-page audit. He looked up at me. His eyes were, for the first time, clear. He saw me. She didn't do anything, he said, his voice flat. She is right. She just told the truth. He took a deep, shuddering breath. We were wrong. My mother burst into tears. They were not tears of relief. They were the tears of a woman who had lost her entire religion. Our face, she wept. Our reputation. Everything. It's all gone. I stood up. I picked up my briefcase. Face doesn't save you from the facts, I said. It just makes the fall more public. I looked at my father. What is your choice? He did not hesitate. He picked up a pen from a cup on the counter. He signed the commitment. He pushed it to my mother. Her hand was shaking so hard she could barely hold the pen. But she signed. He pushed it to Madison. She stared at it, her face a mask of hatred. And then she signed. I nodded. I took the paper. I then placed one more document on the table. It was for me. A legal release, drafted by Eleanor's own lawyers, severing me from any and all financial obligations, past, present, and future, of the Blake family. A notary is waiting in my car, I said. I signed my name. We are done. As I closed my briefcase, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. 2 texts. The first, from Victor Hale. Partnership contract approved by the board. Welcome, Corinne. The second, 1 minute later, from Eleanor. It was 2 words. Map. Approved. I walked out of the kitchen. I did not look back. I walked through the dark, silent house, the house of my childhood, the house of the curse. I opened the heavy front door. The air was cool. The Charleston rain had stopped. The pavements were slick and black, reflecting the yellow glow of the streetlights. The world smelled clean, washed. A car was parked across the street. It was not a new car. It was practical. Noah Harrington got out. He did not cross the street. He just stood by his door, his hands in his pockets. He was holding a small, brown paper bag. He lifted it, a small gesture. I figured, he called out, his voice quiet in the night air. It might be a self-managed kind of dinner, again, so I brought you this. He held up the bag. I could smell the bread. A non-self-managed dinner. I walked down the stone steps. My heels clicked on the damp pavement. I crossed the street. I stood in front of him. I looked at the bag. Then I looked at his face. He was not smiling. Not really. It was just a look of understanding. I took the bag. It was warm. I smiled. A real one. The first one in this city. Maybe ever. This time, I said, I'm eating. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so grateful to share this with you. Please, drop a comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.